want to look at what happens when you multiply any number by I. What happens to it on the complex plane? So we're going to take the very simple number 3. So we're going to just show you that point there. So 3 is here on the real number line. So what happens to this point when you multiply by I and I squared? What happens to it on the complex plane? So let's first multiply by I. So we end up with 3I. So 3I is here on the Argand diagram. Now let's multiply by I again. So we're going to multiply that result by I. So we end up getting 3I multiplied by I. So we get 3I squared. Now I squared is minus 1, so this would end up equal to minus 3. Minus 3 is here on the Argand diagram. So let's now multiply by I again. And in this case we have minus 3 multiplied by I. So you get minus 3I, which is down here. And then we're going to multiply by I again. And in this case we have minus 3I, and that's going to be multiplied by I. So we'd end up getting minus 3I squared. But I squared is minus 1, so that's minus 3 times minus 1. So that ends up being equal to 3. So we're back to our original point there. So what I want you to see, if you can, is that when we multiplied by I first, what we did was we moved from here up to here, and that's multiplying by I, and I want you to see that as a rotation of 90 degrees. We rotated the point by 90 degrees. If we then multiply by I again, we're rotating that by another. So we're multiplying by I, but we're also rotating by another 90 degrees. Another rotation from minus 3 to minus 3I is 90 degrees again. We're multiplying by I. And then our last rotation is, if you multiply again, we're going to go back to our original point. So we multiply by I. Now this is very important because this gives you an idea why complex numbers are so important. Is that when you multiply by I, what you're actually doing is you're coming off the real axis. So if you think of the real axis this way and the imaginary axis this way, what you're doing is when you multiply by I, you're coming off the real axis and up onto the imaginary axis. That's why it gives a complex number is a two-dimensional number. It is the only number that has 2 dimensions, whereas all the numbers on the real axis line are